This is Kanji in Danzanryu Jiu-Jitsu. I'm your host, Professor George Arrington. In this 5-part series, we're going to be looking at the kanji in the board known as Shime Te. Here in part 1, we're going to look at, first off, the actual name of the board, Shime Te, and then we're going to look at the kanji for the first 5 techniques. The source of all of this comes from the scroll that was given by Professor Okazaki to his second-degree black belt students, and the name of this scroll is the Moku Roku, or catalog. Now here are the techniques from the Shime board, the Shime Te board. In this video, we're going to look first at the name of the board there, and then there's some characters underneath that we'll see what those are. And then we'll look at the first 5 techniques in the Shime Te board. So here is the handwritten name of this board. Now if this was in a newspaper, for instance, the printed version of this would look something like that. Okay, so those are the characters for the name of the board. The way that you pronounce that is as follows. Here are the hiragana for those kanji, and the first kanji would be pronounced shime, shime, and then the second kanji would be te. So Shime Te. Now shime means constriction. And oftentimes, when you talk about shime techniques, people think about choking techniques or strangling techniques, but it literally means to constrict or to wring out. To, like, if you had a towel, a wet towel, that you were wringing that out. That's what shime means, or shime. Now te means techniques, so that's actually it means hand, but it can also mean techniques. Now the part that was underneath the Shime name are these characters. In printed form, they would look like this, and they'd be pronounced as follows: ni, then ju, long u sound, so ni ju, and then go, which is a short o sound, so ni ju go, and again the word te. And niju go simply means 25. So this means 25 techniques. So what we see here is that the Shime Te, or the Shime techniques, the constriction techniques, that there are 25 of them. So let's take a look at the actual word shime and see if we can find some interesting things in it. Okay, so here's what the kanji looks like. Now, on the left-hand side of the kanji, this is what's called the radical for this kanji. And that part, if it was just by itself, is pronounced ito and means thread. So that means thread. On the right-hand side, that part of the kanji means to mingle, and the way you would pronounce that, if that was a standalone character, would be majiru. So those characters, when put together, mean constrict. And you might say, well, you know, you have a thread that's mingling around together, that it can constrict things. We need to be careful when we do that, however, because sometimes it makes sense and other times it doesn't. When you mix 2 parts to make one kanji, sometimes they make sense and sometimes they don't make sense to the Western mind. So we need to be careful of that and just learn that that character means to constrict. Now, here's an interesting thing about the word shime. There is another character that is pronounced Shime, and it means almost the same thing. It's this character, and as you see, there's an ito, or a thread, radical on the left, but there's a little bit different on the right-hand side. This is also pronounced Shime, but it means to tighten up something, to tighten. Okay, and so the left-hand side again means thread, but the right-hand side means a sovereign or a ruler. And interestingly, that is pronounced Mikado, and Mikado is the name of an opera. So you may be familiar with that. Now, one very interesting thing about this character in the entire Danzanru system is that whenever we have techniques that are named something Shime or Shime something, we normally use the first character there. There is, however, one technique in Danzanru Jujutsu that uses that character, and I'll leave that as an exercise to the reader. Okay, so the first character we encounter in the Shime board is Arigatami, and that's the handwritten version of it. The printed form would look something like that, and it's pronounced eri and then gatame. Now, let's talk about gatame for one moment here. In our earlier video on the throwing techniques, the nage techniques, we found that the word goshi is really koshi, and when you look that up in a dictionary, you don't look it up with the G sound, you look it up with the K sound. Likewise, with gatame, you would not look that up in the G section of a dictionary or a Japanese word processor. You would use katame. So, but I'm going to leave it the hiragana here in gatame. And in this name, the eri is the word for the lapel. So that is the lapel. And then most people that learn either jujutsu or judo, when they hear gatame, they think of holding something or holding something down. However, this character, katame, does not mean hold. It means to harden or to set, as in concrete, or even to clot, like in blood. So I'm going to use the term harden, like the hardening of concrete, or clot, like in clotting blood, but I'll also use this word here, hold, just as a reminder that that's what we take it to mean, although this kanji does not actually mean a hold. It really means to harden, and if you think about grappling techniques, you're actually hardening yourself down and concretizing the person to the floor. Now, one other interesting thing about this technique is that in Danzanru we have this technique called arigatame. So that's a hold where you are sitting and the person is on their back and you're sitting to their side and holding them down. Now, in judo they have a technique, and it's not exactly the same technique, but it's similar, and it's called kesagatame. Kesagatame, and that means scarf. Kesa means the scarf. It actually means the kind of scarf that's worn diagonally across a Buddhist priest's robe, but it oftentimes means lapel or scarf. So, just as a point of interest, the judo technique that's similar, not exactly the same, is called kesagatame. All right. Okay, the second technique in the Shime board is called katagatame, and here is the written version of that from the scroll. The printed version looks like this, and you might see something that's a little bit strange, and we're going to look at that in a moment. The hiragana is kata, and then again gatame. Kata means shoulder. So you're holding the person down at the shoulder. And interestingly, the judo technique, a similar judo technique, is also called katagatame, although it's done a little bit differently. Once again, gatame means to harden, to clot, but we'll think of it as being holding the person down. So now let's look at this kata character. So here's the printed version of kata, meaning shoulder. And the written version looks more like this. Now you'll notice that little part on the top of the character. On the printed character, it's more like a straight line, whereas on the written character, it's more like a little tick mark. And so there are several characters in Japanese that do this. So if you're reading a newspaper, for instance, and you see this line across, and you're trying to reconcile that to some handwritten version of something, and you see this little tick mark, that straight bar across at the top is the same thing. So that's one interesting thing to watch out for when you're reading Japanese. Okay, the third technique is called Jujigatame, and there's this version from the scroll. The printed version would look like this, and that's read Ju with a long U sound, Ji, and then Gatame. Okay, so what does this mean? So Ju means 10. That is the word for 10. And if you know how to count in Japanese, ichi, ni, san, chi, go, roku, shichi, hachi, ku, and then Ju, that means 10. Now this character Ji means the shape. So this is 10 shaped, or in the shape of a 10. Or you could actually say in the shape of a cross. And once again, the harden or hold version. So, but let's now look at this term. Well, before we look at that, let's talk about the cross shape. When doing this technique, this is where someone is lying down and you are applying the technique perpendicular to their body. So essentially, you are in a cross shape when you're applying this hold. So that's why the 10 shape or the cross shape is used to name this technique. But let's look at this word for shape, G. So this shape or this character is the character for G or shape. Now, one interesting thing about kanji is that this is the G that's in the word kanji. Now, the kan part looks like this and refers to China. And so the China shapes are the characters which were originally made in China and then were adopted by Japan. So that's the word for kanji, and we use that here, and we use it here in juji for cross-shaped. The next technique is called shiho-gatame. Shiho-gatame. And here is the written version of that. And if we saw it in a newspaper, it would look something like that. And the hiragana would look something like that. So we have shi is the first character. The second character is ho, and it's an elongated o sound. And then again the gatame. Now shi means 4. It could this character 4 can also be pronounced yon or yo, or even yotsu in certain in certain applications. Ho means direction, so for direction, and again we could use the term hold, or again it actually means to harden or to set or to clot, but the for direction hold. And this is the technique that's often called the smother hold, where you're pinning the person in 4 different directions over top of them. So they're on their back and facing up, and you're on top of them, holding them down, usually with your head on their belly and your feet going in the same direction as their head. And so they call that a smother hold, because you're actually your belly is on top of their face. Now in judo, they have a very similar technique, but they have and it's a similar name, but it's a little bit different. They call it kami shihogatame. Kami here is the same character for God as in Shin, like in Shinto, but in this case, in this context, the kami does not mean God. It means that which is above. And so this is a 4-corner hold, 4-direction hold, I mean, from above, or the smother hold. And so the last technique in this video we're going to look at is called Sankakugatame. Sankakugatame. Here's the written version from the scroll. Printed, it looks like this: Sankakugatame. The hiragana say san, then kaku, and then gatame. San, you may realize, means 3, because there are 3 lines there. San. And kaku means corner. Now when you have 3 corners, those 2 characters together, if you ever see them together, they actually mean triangle. So a sankaku is a triangle. And again, we have the gatame there. So that is the triangle hold, or the triangle choke that you see oftentimes in MMA matches, and we use that in Danzanryu. For a more detailed explanation of these kanji and the other kanji that are in the Mokuroku, I recommend that you pick up my book, Mokuroku and Kaiden Sho, the official documents of Danzanryu Jiu-Jitsu. In this book, I expound upon several of the different scrolls that were given by Professor Okazaki to students, and I explain them in 4 different ways. I show the actual documents, the printed version of the kanji, because sometimes the written versions are difficult to read, the way that one would read them in a Romanized form, and then the translation. And so I have several different scrolls. I have the scrolls of Bud Estes and Steve Bizek, Ray Law, Sig Kufrath, Bing Fai Lao, and Liebert O'Sullivan. And also I have the document that was given in 1948 by Professor Okazaki called the Kaiden Sho. This was awarded to several of his students after a special class in 1948. So I hope you'll pick that up. It's available on Amazon. Well, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thanks for watching, and keep a lookout for the next episode in this series. Thanks again.